For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are a grandmother's prayers. We are a grandmother's dreamings. We are the breath of the ancestors. We are the Spirit of God.
Hey, this is Dancing Rabbit, and welcome to another Saturday Pagan Perspective. This week's topic has been the ancestors. As Feather said in her video, one of the ways that we honor our ancestors is during our Samhain ritual, we put out a plate for the ancestors, or sometimes for a particular ancestor. And we put on it the food that we're eating during the meal, sometimes that ancestor's special food if it's for a particular ancestor. And we toast the ancestor. We tell stories about him or her, and we remember. Now, I got involved in the ancestors a couple of years before I officially became pagan. I was a Unitarian Universalist agnostic, and I think I was looking for some spiritual connection, my spiritual roots. There was a story in my family that we had Native American ancestors, and so I was looking into that, what's called the Red Path. And to really follow the Red Path, you need to prove, you need to substantiate, you need to document that you do in fact have Native American ancestry. So I went out to Tahlequah, Oklahoma on Cherokee National Day, and I visited and I watched, and I picked up a genealogy book on how to do family research, and I began. And this is the result of my work. Most of these records are handwritten in pencil over 15 years ago. I'm in the process of transferring this to a digital form. There's a number of family history genealogy sites online. One of the best ones, and it's free, is done by the Latter-day Saints, the Mormons. It's called FamilySearch.org, and I'm in the process of transferring my paper and pencil records onto that. And at some point, I'll have that copy and I'll post it online. Did a lot of research, traced the family back as many as 8 and 12 generations in some of the lines, and never did find any Native Americans. So I think maybe this was just a story that my grandfather told to the grandkids to entertain us. But in doing this, I feel like that I have connected with my ancestors. I know things about them that maybe nobody else living in my family knows, and I hope one day to pass this on. If you're a much younger person than myself, I would really encourage you to talk to the older members of your family, your parents, your grandparents, great-grandparents, aunts, uncles, and ask them specifics. When and where were you born? When and where did you get married? These are things that go in a genealogy. Now, in addition to just the bare bones facts and figures genealogy, I'm also interested in family history. And I've written a brief history of my grandfather's grandfather, who was a soldier during the American Civil War, and the different battles that he fought in or ran from, and the different units that he was attached to. For example, his unit from Arkansas, an infantry unit, went into Kentucky and stayed briefly, and while he was there he caught pneumonia and was discharged. It's a really good thing that he did, because a couple of weeks later the unit withdrew to Mississippi and then proceeded to the Battle of Shiloh, where something like 90% of his unit was killed. Had he not gotten sick and gotten discharged, he probably would have been in that battle and I wouldn't be here. Just one of the interesting things you find when you start digging through your family. But I would encourage you to start digging now. There's lots and lots of questions that I wish that I'd asked my grandfathers and my grandmothers, but I can't ask them now. It's too late. So it's just one of those unknowns, one of those speculations. I really believe that the memories of our ancestors, if nothing else, live on. And so it's important to remember. It's important to find out, to know so that you can remember. And it's important to periodically remember them. And I think Samhain, which is coming up in just a couple of days, is an excellent time for us pagans to do that. Another way that I honor and remember my ancestors is through their things, their stuff. And this is something that's very important to me. I think my wife Feather sometimes doesn't understand why I'm so attached to some of this old stuff, but she puts up with me. This is a sprout from one of the mother-in-law tongue plants that my father's mother, my grandmother, gave me. She had a lot of these around our house, and this is one of the sprouts from it, and someday this year there'll be more sprouts. But it kind of helps me remember my grandmother, because she took a lot of time with me when I was really small and did a lot of gardening and taught me a lot of what I know about raising plants. Recently, in the last several months, I felt like that I should do something more in relation to the ancestors and the worship or veneration or respect of the ancestors. When I was in Vietnam, almost every hotel, restaurant, and definitely every house, whether they were Catholic or Buddhist or atheist, had an ancestor altar. I watched people burn joss paper. I watched old ladies light incense and respectfully place it on their ancestor altar. I watched offerings of food and drink be offered daily on the ancestor altar. And I felt like that this was a sort of spirituality, a spiritual practice that I needed to look into. Since I've been in Texas, I've watched Hispanic Texans and their ancestor altars, particularly around Dia de los Muertos, which is coming up just after Samhain. But I felt like I couldn't just appropriate what other cultures do and copy it and just do it. That it wouldn't be my ancestral path. So behind me I have what is my ancestor altar. It's a little whatnot shelf that I inherited from my grandmother. I don't think my grandfather actually made it. I think they bought it somewhere. I do have another shelf that's a quite different design that my great-grandfather actually made. On the different shelves at the top, I have my grandfather's hunting horn. This is not a powder horn. It was actually blown, mostly to call the dogs. I have a small silver bell, which is not an antique, but I use it at the beginning of my ancestor ritual, mainly to call my attention to what we're doing. The second shelf, I have a bundle that Feather tied and left there. Some quartz that I found in Arkansas. My father's pocket knife that my grandfather gave him. Got a small dish of licorice candy. This was my granddad's favorite kind of candy, and almost nobody else in the family would touch the stuff. I've got two glasses that always were on this shelf when it was in my grandmother's house, and I keep clear, cold water in them. Got a candle burning, and this is my granddad's picture, and I'll zoom in on it so you can get a little better look at him and any kind of family resemblance as we come out of the video. I think that if you're younger, this is a time to find out about your ancestors. As you get older and your grandparents have died and your parents have died and you are the last, it gives you a realization that you will become one of the ancestors.